The sound of gunfire tore through the still Montana air as Willow Turner stared out the stagecoach window, her knuckles white against the worn leather seat. It was 1875, and her journey west had just taken a deadly turn. She had come seeking a new beginning after her father's death left her penniless in Boston, only to find herself caught in a robbery that would change everything. "Everyone out," a gruff voice commanded as the stagecoach lurched to a halt. Willow's heart pounded against her corset as the door swung open, revealing a masked man with piercing blue eyes. The other passengers, an elderly couple and a traveling salesman, climbed out shakily. Willow followed, her legs trembling beneath her traveling dress. The bandits had already shot the driver. His body lay crumpled beside the coach, blood staining the dusty road. One of the robbers rifled through the luggage while another held the passengers at gunpoint. "What do we have here?" The leader approached Willow, his eyes traveling over her expensive dress, the last remnant of her former life. "Looks like we caught ourselves a proper lady." Willow raised her chin defiantly, though terror coursed through her veins. "Take what you want and leave us be." A cruel smile spread across his face. "Oh, I intend to." Just as he reached for her, a single shot cracked through the air. The bandit's eyes widened in surprise as he fell forward. Two more shots followed in quick succession, and the remaining robbers dropped to the ground. A rider appeared from behind a rock formation, rifle in hand. He dismounted with easy grace, his movements fluid as he approached the frightened group. Tall and broad-shouldered, he cut an imposing figure against the harsh landscape. "Anyone hurt?" His voice was deep, with a slight southern drawl. "Only the driver," the elderly man answered, his voice shaking. The stranger nodded grimly, his eyes landing on Willow. Something in his gaze changed, a flicker of recognition that she couldn't understand. "Name's Ryder Zachary," he said, holstering his weapon. "Sheriff of Juniper Springs. Town's about 5 miles east of here." He gestured to the horizon where distant buildings shimmered in the heat. "How will we get there?" the salesman asked, looking at the coach with its dead driver. "I'll take you," Ryder said, his eyes still on Willow. "We'll bury the driver properly, then I'll escort you all to town." As the men helped move the driver's body, Willow found herself alone with Ryder for a moment. "You're the Turner girl," he said quietly, not a question but a statement. Willow stiffened. "How do you know my name?" "I've been expecting you." His expression revealed nothing. "Your father's arrangements." "My father," confusion swept through her. "My father died 3 months ago." "Yes, madam, and before he did, he made certain arrangements that involve you and me." A chill ran down Willow's spine despite the brutal heat. "What kind of arrangements?" Ryder's jaw tightened. "We'll discuss that once we get to town. This isn't the place." The journey to Juniper Springs was tense and silent. Ryder led the way on his horse while the passengers took turns riding in the back of a wagon he'd summoned from a nearby ranch. Willow's mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Her father had been a gambling man, prone to reckless decisions. What could he possibly have arranged with this stranger? Juniper Springs emerged from the dusty plains like a mirage, a collection of wooden buildings lining a main street, with scattered homes surrounding it. Unlike the gleaming metropolis Willow had left behind, this town was raw and unrefined, built for function rather than beauty. Ryder took the elderly couple to the town's only hotel, and the salesman to the general store where he planned to peddle his wares. Then, without explanation, he led Willow toward a modest 2-story house at the edge of town. "This is my home," he said simply, helping her down from the wagon. "And now it's yours as well." Willow stopped in her tracks. "I beg your pardon." Ryder sighed, removing his hat to reveal thick dark hair with a hint of copper in the sunlight. "Your father owed me money, Miss Turner, a substantial amount. Before he died, he offered me something in exchange for the debt." The world seemed to tilt beneath Willow's feet. "What did he offer you?" Ryder's eyes met hers, a storm of conflicting emotions within them. "You, Miss Turner, he offered me you." Willow's laugh was bitter and sharp. "That's preposterous. No one can simply trade a person. As his only living heir, your father signed over your hand in marriage to settle his debt," Ryder continued, his voice matter of fact. "The papers are legal and binding. I have them inside. This is the 19th century, Mr. Zachary, not the Dark Ages," Willow snapped, backing away. I am not property to be traded, in Boston, perhaps, but out here a man's word is law and contracts are honored. He gestured toward the vast emptiness surrounding them. You have nowhere to go, Miss Turner, no money, no family. The stagecoach doesn't come back through for another 2 weeks. The reality of her situation crashed down upon her. Her father had gambled away her future as casually as he had gambled away their fortune. You can't force me to marry you, she whispered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her fear. No, I can't, he agreed, surprising her, but I can insist you honor your father's debt one way or another. And if I refuse, then I'll have you arrested for failure to settle a legal obligation. His expression softened slightly. I don't want to do that, Miss Turner. I'm not a cruel man. You would imprison me for something my father did. Indignation flared within her. The law is the law. But I'm offering you a choice: become my wife or face the consequences of your father's actions. No choice at all, Willow thought bitterly. She had heard stories of frontier jails, filthy, dangerous places where women were shown no mercy. How much did he owe you? She asked finally. $5,000. The sum took her breath away. It might as well have been $1 million. I need time to think, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. You have until sunset tomorrow, Ryder replied. You can stay in the spare room tonight. I won't disturb you. That night, Willow barely slept. The room Ryder had given her was simple but clean, with a narrow bed and a small window overlooking the rugged landscape. She considered running, but where would she go? The wilderness would kill her faster than any jail cell. Morning came, harsh sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. Willow found Ryder in the kitchen, cooking breakfast over a cast-iron stove. I've made my decision, she announced, her voice stronger than she felt. Ryder turned, spatula in hand. And I will marry you to settle my father's debt, she said, chin raised. But know this, it will be a marriage in name only. You may have bought my hand, but you will never have my heart. Something flickered in his eyes, disappointment perhaps, or resignation. Fair enough. We'll be married this afternoon by the town preacher. I've already spoken to him. The ceremony was brief and emotionless. Willow wore her traveling dress, now dusty from the journey. Ryder had changed into a clean shirt and vest, his sheriff's badge gleaming on his chest. The preacher, an elderly man with kind eyes, seemed troubled by the couple's obvious tension but performed the ceremony without comment. You may kiss the bride, he said at last. Ryder leaned forward and placed the briefest of kisses on Willow's lips, a mere formality, nothing more. Yet even that fleeting contact sent an unexpected jolt through her body. That evening, Ryder showed Willow around the house that was now her home. It was larger than it appeared from outside, with a spacious kitchen, a comfortable sitting room, and 3 bedrooms upstairs. This will be your room, he said, opening a door to reveal a pleasant chamber with a large bed and a dressing table. Mine is across the hall, Willow nodded stiffly. Thank you. As night fell, an awkward tension filled the house. They ate dinner in near silence, the clinking of cutlery against plates the only sound. When they finished, Ryder cleared his throat. As your husband, I have certain rights, he began, Willow's stomach clenched. Here it was the moment she had been dreading. But I won't exercise them, he continued, surprising her. Not like this, not when you're here by obligation rather than choice. Relief flooded through her, quickly followed by confusion. Then why insist on marriage at all? Why not simply demand payment some other way? Ryder's gaze was steady. Your father knew I was looking for a wife. He offered you as payment because he believed it would benefit us both. How considerate of him, Willow replied sarcastically. And what of your feelings in this arrangement? Surely you didn't want a wife who was forced to marry you. A muscle worked in his jaw. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is honor and obligation, he stood abruptly. Good night, Mrs. Zachary. The title startled her. She was Mrs. Zachary now, bound to this stranger by law if not by love. That night, Willow lay awake in her new bed, tears silently streaming down her face. How had her life come to this? Just months ago, she had been attending society parties in Boston, with suitors lining up to court her. Now she was married to a man she didn't know in a town miles from civilization. The following weeks passed in uncomfortable routine. Ryder left early each morning for his duties as sheriff, returning for dinner in the evening. They rarely spoke beyond necessary conversations about household matters. Willow busied herself learning to manage a Western home a far cry from the Boston mansion with its staff of servants. She learned to cook on the temperamental stove, to clean without the luxury of running water, to shop in the limited general store. The townspeople regarded her with curiosity. The sheriff's new wife was a subject of much speculation, especially given the circumstances of their hasty marriage. Some were friendly, like Clara Jenkins, the schoolteacher who welcomed Willow with genuine warmth. Others, like Beatrice Whitman, the banker's wife, viewed her with open suspicion. "Eastern women rarely last out here," Beatrice remarked during Willow's first visit to the Ladies' Aid Society. "Too soft for frontier life." Willow lifted her chin. "Perhaps you underestimate Eastern resilience, Mrs. Whitman." A month into their marriage, disaster struck. A fire broke out at the livery stable, spreading quickly to nearby buildings. The entire town mobilized to fight the blaze. Willow joined the line of women passing buckets of water from the well to the men at the front. As dawn broke, the fire was finally contained, but several buildings were destroyed. Ryder had been at the forefront of the firefighting efforts, and he returned home covered in soot and burns. "You're hurt," Willow gasped, seeing the angry red marks on his hands and forearms. "It's nothing," he grunted, but his face was drawn with pain. Without thinking, Willow took charge. She filled a basin with cool water and gently cleaned his wounds, applying salve from the medical kit he kept in the kitchen. Ryder watched her work, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," he said quietly when she finished. "You would have done the same for anyone," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "Yes," he agreed, "but it matters that you did it for me." Something shifted between them that night, not friendship exactly, but a tentative truce. Over the following weeks, they began to talk more during their evening meals. Willow learned that Ryder had come west after the Civil War, seeking a fresh start. He had fought for the Union, though he'd been born in Virginia. "My family disowned me for it," he told her one evening. "Said I betrayed my heritage." "That must have been difficult," Willow said, surprising herself with her genuine sympathy. Ryder shrugged. "I did what I believed was right. A man can't ask for more than that." Willow found herself admiring his principles, even as she remained resentful of their situation. She began to see that, beneath his stern exterior, lay a man of deep integrity and unexpected kindness. She watched how he treated the townspeople, fair but firm, respectful to all regardless of station or background. As summer turned to fall, Willow's resentment began to fade, replaced by something more complicated. She found herself watching for Ryder's return each evening, taking more care with her appearance and the meals she prepared. She told herself it was merely pride in her homemaking skills, nothing more. One crisp October morning, Willow was hanging laundry in the yard when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Looking up, she saw 3 rough-looking men riding toward the house. Something about their appearance sent a chill down her spine. "Well, looky here," the leader called, reining his horse to a stop. "You must be the sheriff's new bride, prettier than I expected." Willow straightened, hiding her fear behind a mask of dignity. "My husband isn't home, he's at his office in town." The man dismounted, a leering smile revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "That's just fine with us, madam. We ain't here to see the sheriff." His companions laughed, also dismounting. Willow backed toward the house, her heart racing. "I must ask you to leave," she said firmly, though her voice trembled slightly. "Now, why would we do that when we just got here?" The leader stepped closer. "Name's Vince Holloway. Your husband put my brother in jail last month, sentenced to hang next week." Understanding dawned. "I'm sorry for your brother, Mr. Holloway, but if he broke the law, he didn't do nothing that boy didn't deserve," Holloway snarled. "And now your husband's gonna learn what it feels like to lose something precious." Willow turned to run, but Holloway was faster, grabbing her arm with bruising force. She screamed, struggling against his grip as he dragged her toward the horses. A shot rang out, kicking up dust at Holloway's feet. The men froze, turning toward the sound. Ryder stood at the edge of the property, rifle raised. "Let her go, Holloway, or what, Sheriff? You'll shoot me." Holloway pulled Willow against him, using her as a shield. "Then who'll protect your pretty wife?" Willow could feel the man's hot breath on her neck, his arm like an iron band around her waist. But rather than paralyzing her with fear, his threats ignited something fierce within her. With a swift movement, she drove her elbow hard into Holloway's stomach. As he doubled over, gasping, she tore free of his grip. Ryder fired again, this time hitting one of Holloway's companions in the shoulder. The man screamed, clutching his wound. The third man raised his hands in surrender. "It's over, Holloway," Ryder said, advancing steadily. "Your brother got a fair trial. He killed that boy in cold blood, and you know it." Holloway snarled, reaching for his gun, but Ryder was faster. A single shot and Holloway collapsed, his weapon falling unfired from his hand. In the aftermath, as the town doctor tended to the wounded men and the marshal from the next county arrived to transport them to the territorial prison, Willow found herself trembling with delayed shock. Ryder found her sitting at the kitchen table, a cold cup of tea before her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. She shook her head, though in truth her arm ached where Holloway had grabbed her. "How did you know to come home?" One of the ranch hands saw Holloway and his men heading this way. He knew there might be trouble. Ryder hesitated, then pulled a chair close to hers. "Willow, I'm sorry, I never thought they'd come after you." It was the first time he had used her given name. The intimacy of it, combined with the day's events, broke something inside her. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. Without a word, Ryder pulled her into his arms. She stiffened momentarily, then surrendered to the comfort of his embrace. His shirt smelled of gunpowder and pine, and beneath it, something uniquely him. His hand stroked her hair, a soothing rhythm that gradually calmed her racing heart. "I was so afraid," she admitted, her voice muffled against his chest. "You didn't show it," he said. "You fought back. Most women would have fainted clean away." A watery laugh escaped her. "I've never been prone to fainting." "No," he agreed, a hint of admiration in his voice. "You're stronger than you look." She pulled back slightly to look at him. Their faces were inches apart, his eyes dark with an emotion she couldn't name. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her, and more shocking still, she wanted him to, but Ryder released her, standing abruptly. "You should rest. It's been a difficult day." That night, Willow lay awake long after the house had grown quiet. The attack had changed something fundamental in her perception of her situation. For the first time, she recognized the protection Ryder's name and his ring afforded her in this wild territory. More than that, she acknowledged the growing feelings she had been denying for weeks. The following day brought another surprise. A letter arrived from Boston from her father's former lawyer. Reading it in the privacy of her room, Willow learned that a small investment her father had made years ago had finally paid dividends. There was money waiting for her in a Boston bank, not a fortune, but enough to secure passage back east and establish herself independently. She could leave. The realization struck her with unexpected force. She had the means to escape this marriage of obligation. Yet the thought brought no joy, only confusion. At dinner that evening, she told Ryder about the letter. "So you'll be leaving," he said, his expression carefully neutral. "I haven't decided," she admitted. "A few months ago, I would have gone without hesitation. And now?" His eyes held hers, searching. "Now I find myself reluctant." She toyed with her fork, avoiding his gaze. "I've built a life here. It may not be the life I would have chosen, but it's become mine nonetheless." "You don't owe me anything, Willow," Ryder said quietly. "Your father's debt is paid. If you want to go back to Boston, I won't stop you." His words stung, though she couldn't have explained why. "Is that what you want, for me to leave what I want?" He stopped, jaw tightening. "What I want has never been part of this arrangement." "Tell me anyway," she pressed, heart pounding. Ryder stood, pacing to the window. "When your father first proposed this arrangement, I refused. I told him I wouldn't force a woman into marriage, debt or no debt." He turned to face her. "He showed me your photograph then. Said you were as kind as you were beautiful, and that you deserved better than the fortune hunters circling you in Boston." Willow stared at him in shock. "He said that?" "He did. And fool that I am, I agreed to his terms, telling myself that even a marriage of obligation could grow into something more, given time." His laugh was bitter. "I never told you, but I delayed collecting on the debt for months after his death. I knew you were grieving, I thought. I thought you might come to see me as more than your father's creditor." "Ryder, you asked what I want," he continued, cutting her off. "I want you to stay, Willow, not out of obligation, but because you choose to. Because somehow, against all reason, I've fallen in love with my reluctant bride." The confession hung in the air between them, transforming the small kitchen into a space charged with possibility. Willow stood slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. "I thought you merely tolerated me," she whispered, "that you regretted our arrangement." "Never," he said fiercely. "Not for a single day. Even when you could barely look at me, I considered myself the luckiest man in the territory." She crossed to him then, tentatively placing her hand on his chest. His heart thundered beneath her palm. "I don't know if what I feel is love," she said honestly. "But I know I don't want to leave, not yet, perhaps not ever." Ryder covered her hand with his own. "Stay then, give us a chance to discover what might grow between us without the shadow of obligation. And if I choose to leave eventually, then I'll let you go with my blessing and whatever funds you need." His gaze was steady. "I want your heart freely given, Willow, or not at all." That night, for the first time, Willow went to Ryder's room. She stood in his doorway, wrapped in a thin cotton robe, her hair loose about her shoulders. "Willow." He sat up in bed, confusion and hope warring in his expression. "My first night with you was taken by obligation," she said softly, untying her robe to reveal her nightgown beneath. "But this time it will be by love, or at least the beginning of it." Ryder reached for her, drawing her into the warmth of his bed. Their first true kiss was tentative, a question asked and answered. The second was deeper, an exploration of newly acknowledged desire. By the third, all hesitation had vanished, replaced by a hunger neither had allowed themselves to recognize. He touched her with reverence, as though she were made of precious glass. She responded with increasing boldness, discovering the pleasure of giving and receiving passion. When they joined at last, it was not the dutiful consummation of a business arrangement, but the joyful union of two people finding their way toward love. Afterward, lying in the circle of Ryder's arms, Willow felt a peace she hadn't known since before her father's death. Perhaps even before that. "I never asked how you came to be a sheriff," she murmured, tracing the outline of a scar on his shoulder. Ryder's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "It wasn't my plan. I came west to mine silver like half the men in the territory, found out I had no talent for it." "What happened then?" "The previous sheriff was killed in a bank robbery. I helped capture the men responsible. The town council offered me the badge the next day." His fingers played idly with a strand of her hair. "It suited me better than mining ever did." "You're good at it," she said. "The people here respect you." "Most of them," he corrected, thinking of Holloway and his men. "The ones who matter," she insisted. "You're fair, just that's rare anywhere, but especially here." He kissed her forehead. "Coming from you, that means everything." As winter settled over Juniper Springs, Willow and Ryder's relationship continued to evolve. The tentative affection between them deepened into genuine partnership. Willow took an interest in the town's affairs, joining the school board and organizing a Christmas pageant for the children. Ryder watched her integration into the community with obvious pride. Their nights together grew more passionate as Willow shed the last of her inhibitions. She discovered a bold, sensual side of herself that Boston society would have condemned, but that her husband celebrated. Yet even as their happiness grew, shadows from the past threatened to intrude. 3 months after the Holloway incident, a telegram arrived from the territorial governor. Ryder read it at breakfast, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Willow asked, setting down her coffee cup. "Holloway's trial has been moved to the capital," he said grimly. "The governor wants me to testify." "For how long?" "A week, maybe more." He folded the telegram carefully. "I don't want to leave you alone after what happened." Willow considered this. "Then I'll go with you. I've never seen the capital, and my testimony might help as well." Ryder looked surprised, then pleased. "It would be a difficult journey this time of year." "I'm stronger than I look, remember?" she teased, echoing his words from months before. The territorial capital was a 2-day journey by train. It was Willow's first trip since arriving in Juniper Springs, and she found herself enjoying the changing landscape outside the window. The snow-covered mountains gave way to rolling plains, then to the more settled land surrounding the capital. The city itself was a curious blend of frontier rawness and eastern refinement, larger than Juniper Springs, but still small compared to Boston. Their hotel was comfortable, with actual running water, a luxury Willow had almost forgotten. The trial was scheduled to begin the day after their arrival. That morning, as Willow was dressing, a knock came at their hotel room door. Ryder, already in his formal clothes for court, answered it. "Letter for Mrs. Zachary," the hotel clerk announced, handing over an envelope. Willow took it curiously. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the postmark from Boston. Inside was a brief note from her father's former housekeeper, along with a second sealed letter. "What is it?" Ryder asked, seeing her pale. "It's from my father," she whispered, staring at the second envelope. "Mrs. Davis found it among his things and thought I should have it." With trembling fingers, she broke the seal. "My dearest Willow, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have discovered the arrangement I made with Sheriff Zachary. I imagine you hate me for it, and perhaps you are right to do so. A father should protect his daughter, not barter her away to settle a debt. But you should know the truth of that debt. The money I borrowed from Zachary was not for gambling, as you likely assumed. It was for your mother's medical care during her final illness. I kept the expense from you because you were already suffering watching her fade away. As for why I chose Zachary, I met him during a business trip west. I was impressed by his character and learned he was seeking a wife. He reminded me of myself as a younger man before greed and ambition hardened me. I believed he would treat you with respect and kindness, which is more than I could say for the fortune hunters pursuing you in Boston. I do not ask your forgiveness, only your understanding. And perhaps in time you might find happiness with the man I chose for you, not because I forced you together, but because you discovered in each other something worth cherishing. With eternal love, your father." Tears blurred Willow's vision as she handed the letter to Ryder. He read it silently, his expression softening. "Did you know?" she asked when he finished. "About my mother's medical expenses," he nodded slowly. "Your father told me before he died. I wanted to tell you, but I thought you wouldn't believe me. You were so angry." "I was," she admitted, "and hurt. And scared." She took a shaky breath. "But not anymore." The trial lasted 4 days. Holloway was sentenced to 15 years in the territorial prison for the attack on Willow and for his role in other crimes across the region. The outcome brought Willow a sense of closure, though she suspected Holloway's hatred would not diminish with time. On their last night in the capital, Ryder took Willow to dinner at the finest restaurant in the city. She wore her best dress, a deep blue gown she had brought from Boston but never had occasion to wear in Juniper Springs. "You look beautiful," Ryder said, his eyes warm with appreciation. "Like the society lady you were born to be," Willow smiled, taking his arm as they entered the restaurant. "I was born to be exactly where I am now with you." Over dinner, they discussed their future. The journey had given them time to reflect on their marriage and what they wanted from life. "I've been thinking," Ryder said, refilling her wine glass. "The position of marshal in this district will be opening next year. The governor mentioned it to me during the trial." "Would you want that?" Willow asked, studying his face. "It would mean more responsibility, more travel," he hesitated, "but also more security for our future. For any family we might have." The implication hung between them. They had not discussed children, though Willow had begun to hope for them. "I think you would make an excellent marshal," she said softly, "and I would be proud to be a marshal's wife." Relief and joy spread across his features. "Even if it means leaving Juniper Springs, moving here to the capital. Home is where you are, Ryder," she said simply. "I learned that these past months." He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I never imagined when your father proposed our arrangement that I would find such happiness." "Nor did I," she admitted. "I was so determined to hate you, and now," she smiled, a slow, intimate curve of her lips. "Now I find that I love you quite desperately, Sheriff Zachary." Later that night, in the privacy of their hotel room, they made love with a new depth of feeling. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the moonlight streaming through the window, Ryder traced patterns on Willow's bare shoulder. "I have something for you," he said, reaching for his coat hanging nearby. From the pocket he withdrew a small velvet box. "What's this?" Willow asked, sitting up in surprise. "Open it." Inside was a ring, a delicate gold band set with a small but perfect diamond flanked by tiny sapphires. "But I already have a wedding ring," she said, confused, touching the simple gold band on her left hand. "That ring was part of our obligation," he explained. "This one is a symbol of our choice, of love freely given and received." Tears pricked at Willow's eyes as he slipped the new ring onto her finger above her wedding band. "Will you marry me again, Willow Turner Zachary?" he asked, his voice husky with emotion. "Not for your father's debt, but for our future." "Yes," she whispered, pulling him close. 1,000 times, yes. They returned to Juniper Springs, to a town buzzing with the news of Holloway's conviction. Clara Jenkins organized a small celebration at the schoolhouse where the townspeople expressed their relief and gratitude to Ryder for his testimony. As spring arrived, bringing new life to the land, Willow discovered she was with child. She told Ryder one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. "A baby," he repeated, wonder spreading across his face. His hand moved to rest on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Are you happy?" she asked, though his expression left little doubt. "Happier than I ever thought possible." He pulled her onto his lap, cradling her against his chest. "When I first agreed to your father's arrangement, I hoped for a companion, perhaps eventually a mother for my children. I never dared hope for love. And yet here we are," she murmured, leaning into his embrace. "Here we are," he agreed, his lips finding hers in a tender kiss. Willow's pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer months. The whole town seemed invested in the sheriff's coming child, with gifts and advice freely offered. Even Beatrice Whitman, who had initially been so dismissive of Willow, knitted a beautiful blanket for the baby. As her body changed, Willow found herself marveling at the journey that had brought her to this point. Had the stagecoach not been robbed that fateful day, she might have continued to the teaching position she had secured in California. She might never have met Ryder or discovered the strength within herself to build a life in this wild territory. In late autumn, as the first snow dusted the mountains, Willow went into labor. The town doctor was summoned, along with Clara Jenkins, who had experience as a midwife. Ryder paced anxiously downstairs, banished from the birthing room by doctor's orders. After 14 hours of labor, Willow delivered a healthy baby girl with a shock of dark hair and her father's deep blue eyes. "She's perfect," Clara declared, placing the swaddled infant in Willow's arms. When Ryder was finally allowed in, he approached the bed with uncharacteristic hesitation, as if afraid this happiness might shatter if he moved too quickly. "Meet your daughter," Willow said, her voice tired but triumphant. Ryder sat carefully on the edge of the bed, staring in awe at the tiny face peering up from the blankets. "She's beautiful," he whispered, gently touching the baby's cheek, "just like her mother." "What shall we name her?" Willow asked. Ryder considered for a moment. "How about Hope?" "It seems fitting." "Hope," Willow repeated, testing the name. "Yes, that's perfect, Hope Zachary." In the weeks that followed, Ryder proved himself as devoted a father as he was a husband. He would walk the floor with Hope when she was fussy, allowing Willow to rest. He marveled at each tiny milestone, the first real smile, the first time she gripped his finger with her tiny hand. News arrived that Ryder had been officially offered the marshal position to begin after the new year. The town organized a farewell party, though many expressed their sorrow at losing the sheriff and his family. "You'll come back and visit, won't you?" Clara asked, holding Hope one last time before their departure. "Of course," Willow promised. "Juniper Springs will always be a part of us." Their new home in the capital was spacious and modern, with running water and even electric lights, a luxury Willow had not expected to find in the territory. As marshal, Ryder commanded respect throughout the region, his reputation for fairness and integrity following him from Juniper Springs. Willow found her own place in capital society, not as the Boston debutante she had once been, but as a woman tempered by frontier life. She started a reading program for the children of prisoners, believing that education might break the cycle of crime that affected so many families. On their second wedding anniversary, marking not their legal marriage but the night Willow had chosen to go to Ryder's room, they renewed their vows in a small ceremony with Hope, now a toddler, serving as their only attendant. Willow wore a cream-colored gown, her hair adorned with wildflowers. Ryder, resplendent in his marshal's uniform, looked at her with the same wonder he had shown the night she became his wife in truth as well as name. "I, Ryder, take you, Willow, to be my wife," he said, his voice carrying clearly to their small gathering of friends. "Not by obligation but by choice. Not by arrangement but by love." Willow's eyes shimmered with tears as she repeated similar vows, adding, "You taught me that true freedom comes not from the absence of obligation but from the presence of love." As they sealed their renewed commitment with a kiss, Willow reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A journey that began with a debt, a desperate arrangement, and a reluctant bride. A journey that had transformed obligation into choice, resentment into passion, and arrangement into love. Later that night, with Hope sleeping peacefully in her room and the capital quiet beneath a blanket of stars, Willow and Ryder lay entwined in their bed. "Do you ever regret it?" Ryder asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare back. "Our beginning," Willow considered the question, thinking of all they had survived together: the attack by Holloway, the difficult birth of their daughter, the challenges of Ryder's new position. "No," she said finally. "How could I regret what brought us here, what gave us hope?" She propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at him with love that still took her breath away. "Besides, it makes for quite a story to tell our grandchildren someday," Ryder laughed, pulling her down for a kiss. "A story that begins with obligation but ends with love." "Not ends," Willow corrected, nestling against his chest. "Our story is still being written every day," and as they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, Willow knew it was true. Their beginning might have been unconventional, even forced, but the love they had found was as vast and real as the western sky. A love chosen, not compelled. A love that had transformed a marriage of obligation into a union of souls. 5 years later, Willow stood on the porch of their home, watching Ryder teach Hope and her younger brother James how to ride their ponies in the paddock. At 7, Hope was already a skilled rider, fearless like her father. 4-year-old James was more cautious but equally determined. The capital had grown substantially in the years since they'd arrived, becoming a proper city with paved streets and a newly constructed railway station. Ryder's reputation as marshal had grown as well, his territory expanding to include 3 counties. Willow had established a school for girls that focused not just on traditional subjects, but also on practical skills that would serve them well in the still developing territory. The school had begun in their home with just 5 students and now occupied its own building with 30 pupils and 3 teachers. "Mama, look," Hope called, urging her pony into a trot around the paddock. Her dark hair, identical to Ryder's, streamed behind her like a banner. "Well done, sweetheart," Willow called back, waving. James, not to be outdone, attempted the same maneuver with less success, nearly sliding from his saddle. Ryder caught him just in time, settling him properly with a patient instruction. "Like this, son," he demonstrated, his hands steady on the reins. Watching them, Willow felt a surge of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. This life, these children, this man, all might never have been hers had her father not made that fateful arrangement. That evening, after the children were asleep, Willow found Ryder in his study reviewing reports from his deputies. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing a kiss to his temple. "Hard at work, Marshal Zachary," she murmured. He set down his papers, turning to pull her onto his lap. "Never too busy for you, Mrs. Zachary." Though they had been married for nearly 8 years, Willow still felt a thrill when he looked at her with such desire. Their passion had not dimmed with time. If anything, it had deepened, enriched by their shared history and the family they had created. "I received a letter today," she said, settling comfortably against him. "From Boston." Ryder raised an eyebrow. "Oh, from whom?" "My father's old lawyer. He's retiring and closing his practice." She traced the line of Ryder's jaw with her finger. "He included some papers he thought I should have, including the original contract between you and my father." Ryder stilled. They rarely spoke of that arrangement anymore, the memory of it faded by the reality of their love. "What did you do with it?" he asked carefully. Willow smiled, reaching into her pocket. She withdrew a folded document, yellowed with age. Without a word, she tore it in half, then in quarters. "We don't need this anymore," she said simply. "We haven't for a very long time." Ryder's arms tightened around her. "No, we don't." "I was thinking," she said, changing the subject, "about taking the children to visit Juniper Springs this summer. It's been almost 2 years since our last visit." "I'd like that," Ryder agreed. "I have business in that direction anyway. There's talk of appointing a new sheriff there." They fell into comfortable conversation about summer plans and the children's education. Later, as they prepared for bed, Willow found herself reflecting again on the journey that had brought them together. "Do you know what day it is?" she asked as Ryder joined her beneath the covers. He thought for a moment. "Tuesday," she laughed, swatting his arm playfully. It's been exactly 8 years since I arrived in Juniper Springs, since I met you. Recognition dawned in his eyes. 8 years, he marveled. It feels both longer and shorter somehow. That day when the stagecoach was attacked and you rescued us, did you know then about who I was? Ryder nodded, drawing her close. I recognized you from the photograph your father had shown me. You were even more beautiful in person and twice as angry. I was terrified, she admitted. Everything I knew had been taken from me, my home, my father, my independence, and then you appeared with your demands and your legal papers. I handled it badly, he acknowledged ruefully. I had rehearsed what to say to you for weeks, but when the moment came, all my careful words deserted me. It worked out rather well in the end, she murmured, pressing closer. His hand slid down her back, pulling her more firmly against him. Better than I ever dared hope. Their kisses deepened, hands moving with the familiar knowledge of each other's bodies. 8 years had taught them what pleased one another, what sparked desire into flame. Yet there was always a sense of discovery, of wonder in their lovemaking, as if each time they came together, they found something new to cherish. Later, as they lay catching their breath, Willow's head on Ryder's chest, he spoke into the comfortable silence. I have a confession to make, he said, his voice rumbling beneath her ear. She lifted her head, curious. What sort of confession? Your father never owed me $5,000. His expression was both sheepish and amused. It was $2,000. I inflated the amount because I was afraid you'd find a way to pay it off and leave. Willow stared at him in disbelief, then burst into laughter. You scoundrel, and here I thought you were the honorable one in this arrangement. I was desperate, he defended himself, laughing with her. I had fallen in love with a photograph and a father's stories. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you before I had a chance to win your heart. Well, she said, settling back against him, your deception worked admirably. Here I am, quite thoroughly won. The summer journey to Juniper Springs was like stepping back in time. The town had grown, with new buildings along the main street and more homes spreading outward, but its essential character remained unchanged. Hope and James were excited to explore the place where their parents had met, pestering Ryder with questions about his days as sheriff. They stayed in their old house, now owned by the new schoolteacher who was away visiting family. Walking through the rooms, Willow was struck by how small it seemed compared to her memories. This is where we lived, Mama, Hope asked, peering into what had been Willow's bedroom. Yes, sweetheart, this was my room and your father's was across the hall. Where was my room? James wanted to know. Willow exchanged a smile with Ryder. You weren't born yet, little one. This was before you or Hope came along. On their third day in town, Clara Jenkins organized a picnic by the creek for the old friends who remained. As the children played in the shallow water under Ryder's watchful eye, Willow caught up with the women who had welcomed her to frontier life years before. You've done well for yourself, Beatrice Whitman observed, her earlier hostility long forgotten. A marshal's wife, a school founder. Quite a change from the frightened Boston girl who arrived on that stagecoach. Life has a way of surprising us, Willow agreed. Though I suspect I'm still that same girl in many ways, just with more experience and perhaps a bit more wisdom. And a great deal more love, Clara added with a knowing smile. Anyone can see how you and Ryder feel about each other. It's a rare thing, especially out here where so many marriages are made for practicality rather than affection. Willow's gaze found Ryder, who was showing James how to skip stones across the water. Yes, she said softly, that is rare indeed. That evening, after the children were asleep, Willow and Ryder walked to the edge of town, to the spot where he had first told her of her father's arrangement. The old oak tree still stood, now larger and more majestic against the twilight sky. I was so angry that day, Willow remembered, leaning against the trunk. I thought my life was over. Ryder took her hand, bringing it to his lips. Instead, it was just beginning. Do you remember what you said to me that first night, after we were married? He nodded, his eyes darkening with the memory. I said I wouldn't exercise my rights as your husband, not when you were there by obligation rather than choice. And do you remember what you said months later when I came to your room? A slow smile spread across his face. That your first night was taken by obligation, but this time it would be by love, she finished. And it was, Ryder, it truly was. He pulled her into his arms then, kissing her beneath the oak tree where their story had truly begun. Not with legal papers or a father's arrangement, but with a choice his to wait, hers to trust. As the years passed, their family continued to grow. A third child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Willow's mother joined them 2 years after their visit to Juniper Springs. Ryder eventually left his position as marshal to serve as a judge, a role that allowed him to be home more consistently as their children grew. Willow's school expanded to include boys as well, becoming one of the most respected educational institutions in the territory. She wrote a memoir of her experiences as an Eastern woman adapting to Western life, which found a receptive audience among readers back east curious about frontier living. Hope, headstrong and independent like both her parents, went east to attend college, the first woman from the territory to do so. James followed his father into law enforcement, eventually becoming a Pinkerton detective. Elizabeth, their youngest, showed a talent for medicine and trained as a doctor, returning to serve the community that had watched her grow up. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Willow and Ryder found themselves alone in their home for the first time in decades. Their children were scattered, Hope teaching at a women's college in New York, James on assignment in Chicago, Elizabeth establishing her practice in a neighboring town. "It's quiet," Willow observed as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Too quiet?" Ryder asked, his hair now silver but his eyes as bright and keen as ever. She considered the question, then shook her head. "No, it's perfect. We've earned this peace." He took her hand, his thumb brushing over the 2 rings she still wore, the simple band of their first ceremony and the diamond and sapphire ring he had given her in the hotel room all those years ago. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice thoughtful, "about taking a trip." "Where to?" "Boston." He watched her face carefully. "You haven't been back since you left. I thought you might like to see it again." Willow was silent for a long moment. "I'm not sure there's anything for me there anymore. Everyone I knew is gone." "Not everyone," Ryder corrected gently. "Your parents are buried there. You've never had the chance to properly say goodbye to them." The suggestion touched her deeply. Though she had made peace with her father's arrangement years ago, she had never visited his grave or her mother's. "Yes," she said finally, "I think I would like that." The journey east was far easier than her westward trek had been 3 decades earlier. The Transcontinental Railroad carried them in relative comfort across the country, through landscapes that had seemed impossibly vast and dangerous to the young woman Willow had been. Boston had changed dramatically, grown larger, more modern, yet still recognizably the city of her youth. They stayed in a luxurious hotel that hadn't existed when she left, and visited the cemetery where her parents lay side by side beneath a simple headstone. Standing there, Willow felt a complex mix of emotions: gratitude, forgiveness, and a wistful sadness for the years her parents had missed. "Thank you," she said softly, placing flowers on the grave, "for everything, even the arrangement I once hated." Ryder stood respectfully a few paces behind her, giving her the privacy of this moment. When she rejoined him, her eyes were dry but peaceful. "I'm ready to go home now," she said, taking his arm. "To the hotel?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, home, back west where we belong." Their return journey felt like the closing of a circle. As the train carried them westward, Willow reflected on the young woman who had traveled this route in the opposite direction so many years before, frightened, angry, unaware of the happiness that awaited her. "What are you thinking about?" Ryder asked, seeing her pensive expression as they watched the landscape roll past. "About how differently things might have turned out," she admitted. "If my father hadn't gambled away our fortune, if he hadn't met you, if I hadn't gotten on that stagecoach." "Do you ever wish for that different life? The one you might have had?" Willow turned to him, studying the face that had become as essential to her as her own reflection. The years had left their mark lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun, a scar on his cheek from a confrontation during his martial days, silver threading through the dark hair she loved to touch. Yet his gaze was the same, steady, honest, filled with a love that had only deepened with time. "Never," she said firmly, "not for a single moment." As their train continued westward, carrying them back to the home and life they had built together, Willow thought again of that pivotal moment in their relationship when obligation had transformed into choice, when arrangement had blossomed into love. Her first night may have been taken by obligation, but every night since had been freely given, a testament to the unexpected joy that can grow from the most unpromising beginnings. And in that knowledge, Willow found a contentment deeper than any she could have imagined when she first set foot on Western soil, a reluctant bride embarking on an unexpected journey toward love.